Let's go to the expository writing, and we have done these steps before, so I'm going to quickly show you. The top box is going to be for the big idea. So in our example up here, I had butterflies was our big idea. And then what about them? They fly around in order to find their food. So wild and colorful butterflies, what do? They find their food, or they find nectar in flowers. So butterflies find nectar in flowers. So what's my big idea? If you notice up here, we were talking about butterflies and how they find their food. So we had our butterflies, and then they fly around and they get their food from the nectar in the flower. We go back and we say, butterflies find their food in different types of flowers. What's the rest of our organizer going to be? Because this was our big idea. It's going to be information about the big idea. Have to tell you how they get the nectar from the flowers. And when we talk about that, we're going to need to sequence. They can't just be in any order, categories. We have to actually have a sequence of details. So now each detail after this is going to sequence each step a butterfly goes through in order to get the nectar from the flower. And we had planned that up here in this particular part of our, in this picture, you'll see that was being planned. So we have our kindergarten. You would be planning one sentence a day. Now let's go back, Kinder, because I wanted to show the steps of the narrative, of the expository. Each day after you plan out one sentence, then you would go back and you would add to that sentence you had planned the previous day. So here was a narrative story opening. What's underneath here? Actions, actions, actions till the story's done. So you would plan out the next action. So I am on my bike. What happened next while I was on my bike? I rode fast. So there I am riding fast on my bike. Today we planned I rode fast. Now we're going to write that out on the whiteboard and then put it in the next page in a big book. So each day we'll be planning, talking, and writing. Or maybe we need 2 days. One day to plan and talk out the sentence, the next day to write it out. And again, that was the same thing for the information here. Bugs have different body parts. Now each day we'll be telling about each body part. On page 57, we're going through the process of talking and writing. And basically what that is we have our kindergarten and our first graders. They now have their plan, whether they're doing one sentence in writing or whether they're planning a whole story over several days and then each day after writing one sentence. This is 15 minutes, remember. So when that timer goes off, if the sentence isn't done, the teacher will write out the rest of the sentence. Let's walk through how this looks. I show you right now we have differentiated instruction. We need to make sure, because we have all different levels of kids in our room, how do we set the kids up on the carpet? Well, in kinder, all the kids are going to be sitting in rows, and then they'll have their finger as their writing tool, and they will write in the carpet, whatever a child is writing up on the whiteboard. So usually what I do, kindergarten, is I do the following. I have my kids on the carpet here. The front row, let's say this is the orange team. They're going to be coming up. Just the orange team is going to come up. Different kids on the team will come up to write on the board. They're my front row kids. All the kids behind here, the last rows, they'll actually just be writing on the carpet or on their hand, whatever words are going up on the whiteboard. Now, as the year goes on, and now I'm going to have first grade jump in, kindergarten, later in the year, you'll add whiteboards. So you'll have kids on the carpet, kindergarten and first grade now. The front row here is going to be the writers. They'll walk up to the board. Different children in that team will walk up to write some words from that sentence on the board, as you can see here. The other children will have whiteboards, and they'll actually be writing on their whiteboard and then showing it to you. So you have different, you'll have kids on the carpet with whiteboards, and then you'll have one team that will just be writing up on the whiteboard with you, the teacher. Each day, when it's a new sentence, the teams rotate. So now the orange team would be a whiteboard team, and then the next group that was behind them, they would come up and write up on the whiteboard. So everybody has turns. What if you have kids that are really high? Then on their whiteboard, they'll write out the sentence and they'll write out a second sentence, and then they can hold it in the air and they can share it with the group when you're finished with the lesson. You have whiteboard writers now, whether they are writing with their finger on the carpet or writing with a tiny whiteboard. And then we have our big book writers. And remember, when we have our big book writers, basically what that is those are kids that I'm going to choose at the end of the lesson. And you had your list. We had our little list where we had our publishers and we had our illustrators. And these are the kids. So we had the two lists of all the kids in my classroom. I'm going to pick a list of publishers and illustrator, a child from each list, for the big book to draw the picture or write out the sentence in the big book each day. So now we have whiteboard writers, and then we have big book writers where kids take turns to be able to write, draw a picture or write the sentence for the big book for it to be published. This is the most important part of this page, and this is where I'm going to show you how I teach kids how to say the sentence and then write down the words. So we have children need to know high frequency words. So when I say a sentence like, I am on the bike, I would be a high frequency word. Am, on, they may be words that are high frequency words, but maybe you haven't taught them yet. So you need to say them slowly and write down the sounds, segmenting. I am on the, the may be a high frequency word. Bike, bike may be a word that you need to segment. So you always have to look when you're writing, you have to look at when a child is coming up, they're saying the sentence, I am on the bike. I, and then we're going to write down that word. Before we write it down though, we have to decide, is that an expert word, a known word? A word we need to write as fast as a snap, which means I need to find it on our expert word chart and then write it down. Or is it a word that we don't know and now we need slow-mo man to come and say the word slowly and write it down? We're going to look at high frequency words. Those are words that we need to write as fast as a snap. What do? You're going to go to the chart, the high frequency word chart, the as fast as snap chart, find the word and then write it down. If you don't know that word, then we're going to chant it out, write it into the air. We're going to practice saying the word, write it on the chart, and then you would have a child come up and write it on the board. And the kids would write it on their whiteboards over and over again to learn the word. But that's how we do our high frequency words. If it's a word we don't know, then we say it slowly using the slow-mo man strategy that I'll show you in a moment. And then we're going to write the word down using the segmenting. So slow-mo is when we segment. When they're writing down the words, the other thing that we need to look at is, are they snuggling letters together in a word? So are words snuggled? Do we have spaces between words? Do we know how to go left to right in a sentence? Do we know how to have a return sweep? Do we have our capitals? And do we have our stops? What we're going to do on the very next page is a blank sheet of paper. I'm going to actually walk through a lesson where we're going to say the sentence and write down the words so I can teach you all these different strategies with the students. Let's get started.